publications unlike TASS, the telegraph agency of the Soviet Union, or the foreign bureaus of the Soviet official newspapers, Pravda, Izvestia etc., Novosti's main thrust is directed from the USSR to the outside audience. Domestic services of APN are meant to play only an auxiliary role of fabricating the truth about the beautiful Soviet socialism, recirculating some of the foreign news and features in the local Soviet media and publishing Western progressive writers, such as British James Aldrich, Finnish Martti Laarni, Chilean Pablo Neruda, Canadian Farley Mowat, etc., mainly depicting the West in the most negative terms. Novosti Press Agency's structure is the most evident indicator of its global ambitions. It consists of three major departments: 1. Chief Editorial Board for Political Publications, Główna Redakcja Politpublikacji, GRPP, previously located separately from the main office, in Kutuzovsky Prospect in Moscow. This is, in fact, a large research center for APN KGB, mainly staffed by KGB officers working as journalists and research analysts, shoveling through large volumes of foreign media. 2. Publishing house, turning out thousands of booklets, magazines, books, etc., in foreign languages as well as in Russian. And 3. Editorial headquarters, in Pushkin Square, divided into A. periodical section and B. press section. Editorial headquarters are by far the largest part of APN, employing more than 3,000 journalists, editors, translators, and public relations officers. It has an extensive teleprinter and communication system, part of which, through the APN-controlled departments of information of every USSR embassy, simply steals information from all major telegraph services of the world by tuning their receivers to their frequencies, which is obvious from the number and configurations of the forests of antennas on the roofs of Soviet embassies all over the world. Editorial headquarters controls Novosti bureaus and correspondence offices in every major city of the world. It is divided geographically into a dozen editorial boards, each dealing with a specific target area: Africa, GRSAV, Główna Redakcja Stran Afriki, Central Asia, GRSAZ, Southeast Asia, GRSAVA, Latin America-7, GRSLAM, Western Europe, GRSA, Eastern Europe, GRSVE, USA and Canada, GRSAM. Each geographical subdivision has its own press section and section of periodicals. As is clear from the title, the section of periodicals is responsible for the preparation of materials for hundreds of magazines and newspapers, published and distributed legitimately and overtly by every Soviet embassy, consulate, and other representation, in the language, of the target country. With rare exception, most of the articles, photographs, photoblocks, artwork, and even typesetting for these periodicals are prepared in Moscow. Some color photographs are made in friendly countries such as Finland, Austria, East Germany, or even in less friendly countries such as Japan or USA or West Germany. The most impressive color printing work is normally contracted to companies in Japan or West Germany. The press section of each geographical subdivision deals with preparation of articles, news items, press releases, interviews, reports, features, backgrounds and exclusive letters from Moscow, to be planted in various foreign media through the Novosti bureaus or departments of information of the Soviet embassies. P.R. Men, the friendly mind-benders. Even the most sophisticated and attractive propaganda has little chance to influence the public unless and until it is actively promoted or sold by an army of public relations officers of APN KGB. And Novosti propaganda is not attractive. When I was concocting stories and backgrounders for the foreign media, sitting at my desk at the headquarters of Novosti in Moscow, I simply refused to believe that my boring stuff could be of any interest to anyone in the free world, least of all to convince anyone of the advantages of socialism and even motivate anyone in the struggle for progress and social change. I was wrong. I did not realize at that time, that before my article would reach the page of a foreign newspaper, it had to travel a long way through the sewers of the APN KGB system, and then, nicely packaged, be presented to an editor or a commentator in a foreign capital after a long process of cultivating that editor. After initiation into the secrets of the APN kitchen, I was given extensive training in P.R. activity with numerous delegations of foreign guests of Novosti visiting the USSR. A typical package tour would include not only regular visits to average collective farms and kindergartens, talking to smiling milkmaids and to nicely dressed Eskimos who spoke fluent English and played the grand piano in the woods in Siberia. More importantly, every foreign guest must be made a part of the process of deception. And that takes a -8 person like myself, easygoing, friendly, knowledgeable about the country of my guest, with a small weakness for foreign liquors, slightly cynical about the thugs in the Politburo, able to crack an anti-Soviet joke at an appropriate moment, but above all, able to arrange meetings with newsmakers, people who are usually unavailable to an average journalist. By skillfully isolating foreign correspondents and other visitors from any sources of information and any important people in the USSR, Novosti and the KGB artificially create what we called a deficit of newsworthy information, whereby a foreign guest would gladly swallow a bite offered by a Novosti P.R. man, a visit to a nuclear research center, an interview with a dissident writer, an informal boozing session with a group of highly placed Soviet apparatchiks close to Politburo, etc. In the absence of any other legitimate and safe access to a source for a story, a foreigner would normally accept an invitation from a friendly mindbender, even if a suspicion were there that the Novosti P.R. man may in fact be a KGB plant. After all, a correspondent of an influential Western newspaper has to file some story, someday, upon arrival in Moscow. Novosti P.R. men are given unprecedented freedoms and are able to contact Soviet bureaucrats on the highest levels just to impress an important foreigner and to lay the groundwork for further cultivation by establishing their credibility. When I was assigned to important guests, the entire communication center of APN, including the Vertushka, ultra-high-frequency telephone network, used only by the inter-party apparatus all over the USSR, was at my service. After appropriate sanction by my superiors, I could arrange anything, from an interview with a party boss to a pretty sex object working as an interpreter, for an obliging and flexible foreigner. Similarly, outside of the USSR, Novosti P.R. men are often able to navigate an influential person to important contacts within the Soviet bureaucracy and facilitate arrangements beneficial to that person, or even to his party, government, or corporation. It all depends on a foreign counterpart's motivation, on his, or her, personal interests, moral standards, and integrity, or lack thereof, whether they will go along with the APN contact and pretend it is just business as usual, or resist manipulation or even reject the arrangement. In my own practice and throughout my 12-year career with the Novosti, I have seldom met foreigners who would refuse to cooperate categorically. Most of my guests or foreign contacts would prefer to go ahead, hoping that they were smart enough to see through the trickery and at the right moment stop short of becoming a collaborator with APN KGB. Most of them did not stop. Novosti Cotters -9. Most of Novosti's editorial and journalistic, in other words, creative, staff belongs to the proletarian intelligentsia class, or Obrazovanchkina by a. Solzhenitsyn's definition. None of Novosti's employees are hired from the street, only and always through the protexia of some influential friends and or relatives, with processing by the personnel department, i.e. the KGB. The latter provides no guarantee of loyalty. As a matter of fact, the KGB security check guarantees nothing, except perhaps the accumulation of private information filed with the Department of Personnel. The most carefully checked comrades, like myself, with impeccably proletarian Komsomol backgrounds, may turn out to be defectors. On the other hand, the more trusted an APN man, the more mediocre he is likely to be. By my own observation, the largest influx of staff into Novosti happened in the 3 years after APN's foundation, and most of the newcomers were graduates from special, ideologically oriented colleges. Most typical was my own Institute of Oriental Languages, founded, as rumor goes, by an order of Khrushchev, after one of the old-school Arabic translators failed to convey his words correctly during negotiations with Gamal Abdel Nasser, in 1956. The incident is described by the former editor of the Al-Akhbar newspaper in his book Cairo Documents. The enraged Khrushchev cursed foreign affairs and ordered a new generation of translators to be trained for all possible languages of the third world. On returning from my first assignment to India in December of 1965, one found half of my schoolmates in Novosti. They held first place among the younger generation of ideological subversives. Later we also established the record for number of defectors to the West. Apart from us, specially trained for foreign assignments, the bulk of Novosti's fodder was hired from the armed forces, the administrative cadres of the party and Komsomol, Young Communists League, the KGB, provincial media workers, and finally, employees of affiliated state bureaucracies, such as research institutes, art schools, socio-political organizations, E.G. Union of Friendship Societies, etc. The main core of journalists internationalists consisted of about 500 highly educated and well-traveled men and women, each speaking at least 2 foreign languages. Of these, about 100, working in Novosti's headquarters in Pushkin Square, belonged to the new class of nomenklatura in 1965. Needless to say, getting in there was the ultimate goal of most Novosti staffers. Generally speaking, any position in Novosti is desirable for several reasons, one of which is good pay, by Soviet standards. The average junior editor starts with 120 to 150 rubles a month. In 3 years he may make 200 rubles, with promotions to editor and senior editor positions. Knowledge of a foreign language adds 10% to one's salary. For using English, Hindi, and Urdu on the job I got the maximum 25% language additional pay. The level of linguistic ability and its application were tested yearly by a special examination commission. Comrades who had the courage to write originals were paid honorariums, which often amounted to another 100 rubles a month. Thus, my own salary, after only 3 years within Novosti, was close to 300 rubles, compared with an industrial engineer's salary of some 100 rubles. The average workload per Novosti Sol is hard to calculate. In theory, each APN editor must process about 30 double-spaced typewritten pages per working day. I seldom saw any of my colleagues achieve this quota. On the other hand, I myself sometimes made more than 30 pages a day. I soon discovered that it is not the number of pages, but the number of rubber stamps you must collect on these pages, that matters. The main work consists of running up and down staircases to obtain signatures. As to conditions of work, I have discovered, after defecting to the West and working for a newspaper and a radio station in Canada, that Novosti may only look a bit crowded, 15 to 20 souls in a room 20 by 40 feet, but they don't sit at their desks all the time. Most of the day is spent in the corridors or cafeteria. Apart from easy work and high monetary gains, Novosti offered a number of other benefits, extremely attractive in Soviet conditions: proximity to ideological power and access to uncensored information, the second most desirable currency in the USSR after the American dollar. There is the possibility of travel abroad, and defection, and one may create for oneself and family a way of life resembling that of the West, so, there is no need to defect. For sociable people, Novosti offers the chance to meet very interesting people, including sons and daughters of high-ranking Soviet officials. For a commoner, a marriage into a nomenklatura family means speedy promotion and a secure career. Finally, for Soviet hedonists, Novosti gives a chance to enjoy such forbidden pleasures as casual sex, sometimes with foreigners, when working for KGB, indulgence in drinking and drugs, and the accumulation of foreign objects, from cigarette lighters to cars. If for nomenklatura and loafers Novosti offers a relatively comfortable life with a touch of creativity, for idealists APN may provide the illusion that one is doing something for peace and understanding. I knew a number of junior colleagues, who though realizing the sinister nature of Novosti, still hoped that after obtaining some power they would change the system from within. These people had a tough time preserving their ideals, integrity, and sanity. Many made the painful transition from high idealism to deep cynicism. Only a negligible minority of true comrades could stubbornly believe in the possibility of socialism with a human face. These would not advance. The party does not need such dedicated idiots in its higher ranks. I do not remember an instance of an honest man atop Novosti. What I do remember is the fact commonly known in Moscow, that Novosti perhaps holds first place in the number of mentally ill, alcoholics, sadists, masochists, schizoids, graphomaniacs, etc., and is something of an asylum for all sorts of mental cases never reported to the Serbsky Institute, that is, as long as they continue to pretend to be loyal to the power. And these are the cadres who decide all in the business of ideological warfare against the rest of the world. Novosti personnel of the USSR Embassy in India at their favorite pastime, boozing. -12, Party line of Novosti. Novosti's link with the Central Committee's agitprop is a commonly known secret some progressive foreign collaborators somehow overlook. But for an average Soviet citizen, illiterate or otherwise, it is as clear as day that everything, including the people of our country, belong to the party. Every Novosti staffer is aware of the fact that our nonpartisan, non-government, and independent news agency is tied to agitprop administratively, financially, ideologically, and by telephone. In the Central Committee's apparatus there is a large group of reference comrades responsible for the ideological brainwashing of mankind. Unsuspecting people throughout the world are born and die, eat or starve, make love or war, supposedly in strict accordance with the plans of the Central Committee of CPSU, elaborated by the reference. I met several comrades responsible for the Indian subcontinent. One was called Kutzobin, a skinny, sickly fellow of about 60, then head of the Indian section. Another was Yakunin, a tall, blue-eyed Aryan of about 45. Later, one of our Novosti men, characteristically my former schoolmate, Vadim Smirnov, joined the CC's Indian section and was placed in charge of the very same thing he had previously done, in India, at the orders of others. Some of the referents are known KGB agents and informers. This fact does not bother either the Central Committee or, for that matter, the governments, parliaments, security services, and media, of countries where the comrades are accepted and accredited as diplomats and journalists. Naturally, the responsibility for the communist remaking of the Roeraldizitsixalal Ridmibnidet Siepenrits Reneltiktwam Maisto e Fwartahigtanimed Biro Greichsiavebli Koneltivated by the APN and KGB. On October 27, 1967, one brought a large group of editors and publishers of India's leftist and communist papers to the Central Committee to meet Comrade Yakunin, and later Comrade Ulyanovsky, a boss in agitprop. The Indians had just finished a 3-week tour of the Soviet Union. I showed them all the typical collective farms and kindergartens Novosti could arrange, and the comrades were full of impressions and provocative questions. They were what we call unscared idiots and truth seekers, who wanted to show they took our propaganda seriously and expected us to do what we preach. They looked as if they believed they were invited to Moscow to exchange opinions. 13. Why, they asked, does Novosti use such incomprehensible language in propaganda literature? Isn't it possible to explain the advantages of socialism to the Indian masses in plain language? Why is the artistic form in the USSR always a standard Russian bourgeois, whether the content is socialistic, as in the opera about an Uzbek collective farmer, or capitalistic, as in Swan Lake? Why had the Soviets selected from all the many Indian movie makers a vulgar and trivial profiteer, Raj Kapoor, and neglected a progressive realist, Satyajit Roy, who had won the Film Festival Prize? The General Secretary of the Communist Party of Gujarat State, Comrade P. B. Vaidya, asked questions for which a Soviet comrade would get into deep trouble. Why, he asked, do Novosti and other Soviet